Welcome back. Today, on our journey through the Bible, we will be learning about how the Hebrews escaped Egypt.
For the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so.
The Great Escape. Our memory verse today is taken from Psalms 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Plagues 1 to 3. After Moses had assured the people that God had heard their cry and would deliver them, God sent Moses and Aaron back to the Pharaoh to tell him to let the Hebrew people go. When they went before the king, he asked them for a sign. So they did as God had previously commanded. Aaron threw his rod to the ground, and it became a snake. So Pharaoh called his magicians to do the same, and they did. However, Aaron's rod swallowed up all the magicians' rods, but Pharaoh was stubborn and refused to let the people go. The next day, God told Moses to go meet Pharaoh by the river with the same command. So he did. Moses and Aaron saw the Pharaoh in the river and told him, "The God of the Hebrews has said, 'Let my people go.'" And of course, the Pharaoh said no. So Moses and Aaron did as God had instructed. With Aaron's rod they performed another miracle, turning the river and all the waters in pools and ponds into blood, and all the fish in the river died. Then Pharaoh called his magicians. Again they did a similar miracle, and the Pharaoh remained stubborn. Again, God sent Moses and Aaron to the Pharaoh with the message, "Thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me." Again, the Pharaoh refused. So Aaron stretched his rod over the river and the ponds, and many, many frogs came up and covered all of Egypt. Again, the Pharaoh called his magicians, and they also brought up frogs, and Pharaoh remained stubborn. After a while, the frogs began to bother the Pharaoh, so he called for Moses and Aaron. When they arrived, he asked them to ask God to take away the frogs, and then he would let the people go. So Moses agreed, and he asked God to take away the frogs, and he did. And when the Pharaoh saw that the plague was ended, he became stubborn again and refused to let the people go. So God told Moses to tell Aaron to hit the dust of the earth. So Aaron did as he was commanded, and lice covered the whole of Egypt. And Pharaoh's magicians tried to do something similar, but could not. So they told Pharaoh that this was the work of God, but Pharaoh remained stubborn. Plagues 4 to 6. The next day, when the Pharaoh went to the water, God sent Moses and Aaron to him with the same message, "Thus saith the Lord, let my people go." Again, Pharaoh refused. So God said that he would now make a division between the children of Israel and the Egyptians. No more of the plagues would affect Goshen. The next plague that came was a swarm of flies. The flies covered all of Egypt except Goshen, where the Hebrews lived. Again, Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, promising to let the children of Israel go, but not too far, if they would pray to God to remove the flies. So Moses agreed and asked God to remove the flies, and he did. Again, the Pharaoh was stubborn, and refused to let the Hebrews go. Again, God sent Moses to the Pharaoh with the command, "Let my people go." Again, Pharaoh refused, so God sent another plague, murrain. Murrain is a serious disease that infects and kills animals. All the Egyptian cattle died, but the animals in Goshen remained healthy. Even with this, Pharaoh refused to let the Hebrews go. Then God told Moses to take a handful of ash from the furnace and sprinkle it toward heaven when he was in front of Pharaoh. So Moses obeyed. When he did this, every Egyptian, including the Pharaoh, his magicians, and even the remaining animals, were covered in boils. But even in his pain and suffering, the Pharaoh remained stubborn and refused to let the Hebrews go. Plagues 7 to 9. Again, God sent Moses to the Pharaoh with the message, "Let my people go, that they may serve me." Because Pharaoh refused to obey God's command, God said he would send hail from heaven the next morning. The Egyptians that heard this and believed in the Hebrew God were glad for the warning. They brought in what was left of their animals and protected their servants in their houses in preparation for the storm. Then God told Moses to stretch his rod out toward heaven. So Moses obeyed. When he did this, thunder clapped in the sky, and a heavy hailstorm fell, and fire ran along the ground. The hail caused a vast amount of destruction in Egypt, killing animals, people, and damaging trees and plants in the fields. The Egyptians that believed saved most of their property. The Egyptians that did not believe lost their animals and servants in the hailstorm. The land of Goshen remained untouched by the hailstorm. Again, Pharaoh begged Moses to ask God to stop the storm. Moses made the request, and God put a stop to the storm. But Pharaoh remained stubborn. Moses and Aaron again went before the Pharaoh, pleading with him for his sake. They asked him how much longer he would be stubborn. His country was falling apart. They repeated God's message, "Let my people go, that they may serve me." Again, Pharaoh refused, and God sent a swarm of locusts across the land of Egypt. The locusts ate all the fruits and crop that were not destroyed by the hailstorm. With this, Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron. When they arrived, he confessed that he had sinned and begged for forgiveness. Then he asked them to pray that God would take away the locusts. So Moses did, and God sent a strong west wind that took away the locusts. However, the Pharaoh remained stubborn and refused to let the Hebrews go. Then God told Moses to stretch his hand toward heaven again. When Moses did this, a thick darkness covered all of Egypt. It was so dark the people couldn't even see their hands in front of their faces. For 3 days this darkness remained, and no one moved from where they were because they could not see. Pharaoh again called Moses to his palace. He told Moses to take the people only. They have to leave the cattle. Moses said they couldn't do that. They needed the cattle to offer sacrifice when they go to worship. Moses said when they leave, not a hoof will remain in Egypt. Again, Pharaoh was stubborn and said they could not leave. He also told Moses never to return to the palace, because if he ever saw him again, he would die. So Moses agreed to never come before Pharaoh again. The first Passover. God told Moses to tell the Hebrews to get ready. They were to pack up all their belongings and collect jewelry from their Egyptian neighbors as payment for years of unpaid labor. Then God told Moses that he would send one more plague on Egypt, and after this plague, Pharaoh would let them go. However, there was something the Hebrews needed to do to make sure this plague did not affect them. Any family who painted their doorposts with the blood of a lamb would not be affected. They were to kill a lamb in sacrifice and paint the doorpost with the blood. Then they were to roast the flesh of the lamb and eat it with unleavened bread, and drink bitter herbs as their last meal in Egypt. So Moses told all the people of God's instructions. The Hebrews obeyed, and even some of the Egyptians who believed in God. The final plague was the death of the firstborn of every household and every animal in Egypt. However, if the doorpost of the house was painted, the death angel would pass over that house, and no one there would die. That night all the Hebrews and the believing Egyptians stood ready to depart when instructed. They ate their meal quickly and quietly, then prepared to leave. Then the death angel came through Egypt. The firstborn from every household without the blood on the doorpost, including Pharaoh's house, died. Pharaoh and all the Egyptians were distressed by the sudden deaths. So Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron and instructed them to get all the Hebrews out of Egypt. Quickly, the children of Israel were organized and began their journey out of Egypt. They were finally returning to the land God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Red Sea. After the Hebrews left Egypt, they were very excited for the promise of their own land. To guide them on their journey, God appeared before them as a pillar of fire during the night and as a cloudy pillar during the day. While on their journey, God gave them instructions on how to live when they were in their new home. When the time of mourning in Egypt was ended, the Pharaoh realized his workforce was gone. His stubbornness returned. Pharaoh, in his anger, gathered his army and followed after the Hebrews. By the time the Pharaoh and his army caught up with the Hebrews, they were camped at the Red Sea. When they saw the Pharaoh and his army coming, they became disheartened and were very afraid. The leaders of each tribe came to Moses terrified, asking what he was going to do. Moses told them not to be afraid and see how God would save them. Again, the Hebrews gathered their belongings for movement. God instructed Moses to stretch his rod over the Red Sea, and it would divide and give them dry ground to walk on. Then God placed the cloudy pillar between the Hebrews and the Egyptians to protect them. Moses did as God instructed, and a strong east wind blew all night, and by morning the Red Sea was dry land for the Hebrews to cross. They jubilantly crossed to the other side. When the Pharaoh saw this, he instructed his army to follow on this path as well. When they were in the middle of the sea, God instructed Moses to stretch his rod over the Red Sea again, and the waters returned to its place, and drowned Pharaoh and his army. The Hebrews were now completely free of the Egyptian tyranny. Now it's time for our activity. First question: how many plagues did God send on Egypt? Yes, God sent 10 plagues. Whose rod became a snake before the Pharaoh? That's right, it was Aaron's rod. How many signs or plagues did Pharaoh's magicians repeat? And can you name them? All right, there were 3. The first one was right, turning the rod to the serpent, then water into blood, correct. And yes, the plague of frogs, they could repeat those. Now, let's see if we can write the plagues in order of how they occurred. Which of these came first? Yes, the waters became blood. What was second? Yes, the second plague was frogs. And the third? Was lice. And the fourth? Correct, flies. And the fifth? Murrain. Sixth? Boils. That must have been painful. Seventh? That's right, hail. The eighth? Correct, locusts. We had that recently. The number 9? Darkness. That must have been scary. And the last one was? Yes, the death of the firstborn. What happened when the Pharaoh and his army tried to follow the Hebrews? Correct. They drowned in the Red Sea. Try to write or say the memory verse from memory.
Yes, Jesus loves
Next time,
me.
we'll read
Yes,
about the Hebrews'
Jesus loves
journey to the
me.
Promised Land.
Yes, Jesus loves me, for the Bible tells me so.